Yesterday, at the conclusion of the talk, Sayadaw promised to explain to you these two kinds of pleasures, Sukkha, namely Vedayita Sukkha and Avedayita Sukkha, or Santi Sukkha. Pleasures perceived through the six sense objects are called Vedayita Sukkha, and be translated as sensate pleasure, pleasures perceived through the senses. And the other one is the kind of pleasures not perceived through the six senses or sense objects. This is known as Avedayita Sukha, the opposite of Vedayita Sukha, non-sensate pleasure, or Santi Sukha, pleasure of peace. Now, as regards the first one, sensate pleasure, Vedayita Sukha, this is the kind of pleasure which is enjoyed by most people in the world. Enjoying good sense objects. There are six sense objects. Whenever one comes into contact with desirable objects, then one would enjoy it. Like seeing a desirable visible object with the eye, hearing a sweet sound or voice with your ear, tasting good taste with your tongue, smelling good smell, sweet smell with your nose, coming into contact with good tangible objects with your body sensitivity. And whenever you have fantasies, like good ideas and thoughts, you think about them, as this enters your heart base. There's a saying, Phassa Pechaya Vedana. These are the contexts. That is the contact between these three things, namely the object, the door, and the consciousness. When the three come into contact, for instance, when the visible object impinges your eye door, causing seeing consciousness, the three are known in one state as contact. In Pali it is called phassa. And it is said that phassa pechaya vedana. With contact as condition, there arises feeling or sensation. So in the eye door, this visible object impinges your eye door, giving rise to hearing consciousness. And the voice or sound impinges your ear door, causing hearing consciousness. All these contexts of these pairs of three make up phassa contact. The same thing goes with nose door, tongue door, mind door, and so on. When the body comes into contact with desirable tangible objects, when you want a warm tangible object, you come into contact with tangible object, in this case warmth, the warm weather, warm things, warm clothes. Or you want something cool, you come into contact, or you allow things to come into contact, things which are cool, like cool air and so on. It comes into contact with the tangible part of the body. That also causes body consciousness. The three make up phassa contact, in this case body contact. And when you have good ideas, desirable ideas and thoughts, especially for those who are prone to fantasies, then you think about it, and this thinking consciousness coming into the ideas and thoughts impinging your mind door. We call it heart base, giving rise to thoughts and ideas. These three make up phassa contact, in this case mental contact. So in this way these things happen. Contact, as you understand now, which is known in Pali as phassa, and it is said phassa pechaya vedana. contact. With contact as condition, there arises feeling or sensations. So, in this way, when you come into contact with good objects, impinging the respective door, you enjoy these such pleasures. These are the pleasures of senses, or pleasures perceived through senses, any of the 6 senses, such as visible, Vedayita, Sukkha. And when you come into contact with desirable, interesting objects, you enjoy such senses, enjoy these things, you enjoy these pleasures. And such pleasures are known as Vedayita Sukkha, sensate pleasure. That means pleasures perceived through any of the 6 senses. So most people enjoy such pleasures, or most people go in pursuit of such sensual pleasures. And the reverse of that is Avedayita Sukkha, non-sensate pleasure. It is a kind of pleasure not perceived through any of the 6 sense objects or 6 sense doors. It has the sense of peace, feeling of peace. Has no object which comes into contact. You don't come into contact with any sense object. Hence it is peaceful. Hence it is known as Santi Sukha. That means this non-sensate pleasure, Avedayita Sukha, is called in another sense Santi Sukha, pleasure of peace, or bliss of peace. In this way we have these 2 kinds of pleasures. As for the second kind of pleasure, non-sensate pleasure or pleasure of peace, is something which cannot be realized by mundane or worldly consciousness or worldly means. It cannot be realized, it cannot be experienced by worldly means. It can only be realized with the path and its fruit, by being able to experience by oneself, Pacceka Sayadaw. That is accomplishing through one's own experience, or experiential accomplishment, or experiential knowledge. Only when one becomes Ariya, noble one, will one be able to understand or enjoy or experience this kind of pleasure. That is the second kind of pleasure, Avedayita Sukha, non-sensate pleasure. Now, it also is not easy at the same time to infer, to understand it through inference or deduction. We mean the second kind of pleasure, Avedayita Sukha. It's not easy to understand it. Let us say, when we are hearing something, there is the ear, door, or sensitive part of the ear, and there is a sound or voice which impinges your ear door. And if there is no hindrance in between, there's no wall or something to hinder it, to prevent it, and there is space only. And if you pay attention, manasikara, then when these 4 conditions are fulfilled, you are bound to hear the sound of the voice. You repeat it. The 4 things are the ear sensitivity, the sound of voice, and lack of absence of hindrance and mental advertence or attention. When these 4 things are fulfilled, then you are bound to hear the sound of the voice. And if these 4 things are fulfilled, nobody can prevent you from hearing the sound. And if these 4 things are not fulfilled, you will not hear any sound or voice. Such is known as Pacceka Sayadaw. You are experiencing it. You are knowing it, realizing it through your own personal experience. And this in Pali is known as Pacceka Sayadaw. Experience, accomplished experientially. Accomplishment or accomplished experientially. So, as it is easily experienced by all beings. And just as you are hearing a voice in the present, that is Pacceka Sayadaw, experiential knowledge, you can deduce or infer that in the past also, when these four conditions are fulfilled, you are bound to hear the voice of the sound. Such is understanding it through deduction or inference, known as Anumana Sayadaw, accomplishing through inference or deduction. But here again, only when one can understand through Pacceka Sayadaw, experiential knowledge, will one be able to deduce or infer this inferential knowledge, Anumana Sayadaw. And also, as much as in the present this can be heard, in the past also such things could happen. That if these four things are fulfilled, in the past also you could have heard this. The same thing goes in the future. In future also, although you are not experiencing it at the present time, right now, you can deduce or infer that in future, when these four conditions are fulfilled, you are bound to hear the voice of the sound. That again is Anumana Sayadaw, inferential knowledge or inferential accomplishment. And also, as much as you can deduce that you can hear when these four conditions are fulfilled in yourself, you can also deduce that other people also will experience similarly if these four things are conditioned. Such also is Anumana Sayadaw. In this way, this same thing is true with the sense impressions such as seeing, tasting, smelling, touching, thinking. From Pacceka Sayadaw, experiential knowledge, you can deduce to realize Anumana Sayadaw, inferential knowledge. This happens when things are within your reach, within the reach of your knowledge. There are things which are beyond the reach of your knowledge, beyond the reach of your intellect, known as Anapana Sayadaw. This is something which you can also accomplish through faith and confidence, things which are beyond your intellect. So this can be accomplished only with faith and confidence, neither with experiential knowledge, neither through experience nor inference. For example, Paraloka in Pali. Paraloka means other world. That there are other worlds besides human being. There are the Deva world, there are the Brahma world, and so on. And if one commits unwholesome deeds, one is bound to suffer the state of loss, suffer in the state of loss. Such things are known as other worlds, Paraloka. And belief in this thing also is not possible unless you have faith and confidence. Because you are not experiencing it, neither can you draw deduction or inference about it. It's not possible to understand through Pacceka Sayadaw or Anumana Sayadaw through experiential knowledge nor inferential knowledge. So also Nibbana, which is a cessation of suffering of mind and body, it is which can only be realized or understood with the path and its fruit. So they are not because they are neither experienced nor inferred or deduced. Neither Pacceka Sayadaw nor that means understanding of Nibbana cannot be accomplished through your own experience as such, by worldly means, nor you can deduce or make inference what Nibbana would be like through inferential knowledge, Anumana Sayadaw. This is something beyond your intellect or beyond your reach. This can only be accomplished through faith and confidence in the Buddha, because the Buddha has preached the existence of Nibbana. And as much as you have faith and confidence in the other teachings of the Buddha, by your own experience, you can deduce that what the Buddha said about Nibbana must be true, that there is such a thing as cessation of suffering of mind and body called Nibbana. through Anapana Sayadaw, that means through accomplishment by faith, such is known as Anapana Sayadaw. And because you are believing the thing which is worthy of faith, it is also known as Sadeya Sayadaw. Sadeya means worthy of faith, because you are accomplishing through believing in something which is worthy of faith. Hence, this kind of accomplishment is known as Anapana Sayadaw or Sadeya Sayadaw, accomplishing through faith and confidence. So one cannot experience this by physical Sayadaw. It is difficult to convince what this Nibbana is like unless one has experienced it by himself or herself. Only when one experiences by oneself will one be able to understand what it is like to see or realize Nibbana. So I would like to say a story in order to exemplify it. At one time in a village there are two sisters. The younger sister was married and the elder was not. One day when the two met, the elder sister who was not married asked the younger one, how is it like to be married life? What is it like, a married life? So the younger sister said, well, you should get married yourself. Then you will understand it. That was the answer given. So unless you become a noble one yourself, Ariya, having seen the Nibbana, then you will not be able to understand what Nibbana is like. You have to undertake your practice by yourself to realize it. Then only you will be able to understand what Nibbana is like. That is Nibbana, which is Avedayita Sukkha, non-sensitive pleasure, or pleasure of peace. Santi Sukkha, free of impurities. Because it is free of impurities and free of suffering, this can only be seen by a mind, a consciousness, which is pure and free of suffering. So one has got to practice in order to overcome or to eradicate all these impurities and all these undermining elements by guarding the mind with vigilant mindfulness of every arising, seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, and so on, every object which impinges your six sense doors. So that when you are noting like this, there will be no likes or dislikes about desirable or undesirable object. And then, because you are noting with application of sustained mindfulness, you are bound to see the true nature of the objects noted, beginning with the discernment of mind and body and the conditionality. And later, seeing the universal interlocking characteristics of impermanence and so on, then you will become clear about the object. If you are not mindful in this way and know the nature of the object, there will be likes and dislikes about the object. And if you are not noting the objects effectively, if you miss them or lose them, then there will be delusion, you become deluded. Because you are not knowing it. Not knowing means you get deluded. Your lacking in clarity of mind. Or we call it ignorance. There are two kinds of ignorance: not knowing the truth, knowing in the wrong way. And this is very tormenting. They are tormenting elements, undermining elements, which lead to suffering, which are impurities. So you are practicing in order to overcome these things, that is impurities and undermining elements. First on a part-time basis, then building up momentum. When you come to consummation of the practice, you come to see with your pure mind that is path and the fruit, this Avedayita Sukkha or Santi Sukkha, non-sensitive pleasure or pleasure of peace, by realizing it by your own experience. It's just like getting married. Once you get married, you will understand what a married life is like. So try and practice, you will find out what the result of that practice is. In the text has been explained the nature of Nibbana as Savatokha, Pamojana Nibbana. Nibbana means freedom or liberation or cessation or liberation from all kinds of suffering. Such is the explanation given in respect of Nibbana. Cessation or liberation, cessation of suffering or liberation from all kinds of suffering. Suffering is of three kinds. Dukkha is suffering in Pali, means dukkha, and this dukkha is of three kinds. One is dukkha, and vibhinama Sukkha, and sankhara dukkha. Now as for the first one, dukkha, since the two are used repeatedly, it means it connotes extreme case of suffering. The kind of suffering which happens in the body when you are sitting in meditation. You feel aching, pain, excruciating feeling, which give rise to mental distress, because you feel unhappy, and you feel the suffering both physically and mentally. This is known as also Chitti Sukkha, because it is kind of or Vibhinama Sukkha. Because when you are free from that, you feel happy. Now as for the yogis, they suffer from this physical pain and ache in the course of the practice. And when this suffering goes away, you feel happy. Hence it is known as Vibhinama Sukkha. And as regards Sankhara Dukkha, it means it is a kind of suffering due to conditioning of things. Being things are conditioned. All mind, body are conditioned, such as hearing, seeing, tasting, touching, rising, falling, lifting, moving, praising, bending, stretching. All these things are conditioned. They are known as conditioned phenomena. These conditioned phenomena are not permanent. They do not happen as you wish it to happen because they are conditioned. Hence it is known as Sankhara Dukkha. Sankhara, conditioning or forming, and Dukkha, suffering, conditioned suffering. In the body, you are not free from these three kinds of things: Dukkhas, Dukkha, Vibhinama Sukkha, and Sankhara Dukkha. Hence, all these things are called Sabbha Dukkha, all sorts of suffering. And freedom from these all sorts of suffering, or cessation of suffering, is what is meant by Nibbana. In the text known as Pratisambhida Megha, the discriminations, the book of discriminations, is given this expression Ubhado Sankhara and Ubhado Nibbana. That means Ubhado means conditioned things which are arising, such as seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, bending, stretching, lifting, moving, pleasing. This is known as process, the process of activities, of the activities which flow like a current continuously. And anubhado means not happening, not arising. And not arising means cessation of this current. The cutting off this current is Nibbana. So, or in another sense, it is given as Bhavata Sankhara and Abhavata Nibbana. Bhavata, process or proceeding, process of seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, all these sense impressions and all activities by mind, by body, speech and mind. All these things are happening. This is Bhavata, and this Bhavata is Sankhara. Conditioned things are proceeding, and when these things are not proceeding, non-process, Abhavata is Nibbana. Even when you are asleep, that is this inactive consciousness, known as Bhavanga Chitta. This is happening. This is occurring in your mind, although you are fast asleep. It's just like when a waterfall is coming down from a height, and it will go on flowing. And then when water flows, you think it is the same water there, but it's not the same water. It is the old giving place to the new. Is one thing is going away, another thing is taking its place, such as bhavata, just like your sense impressions or activities, all the actions which occur by body, speech and mind. And these are called sankharas, or formations. And abhavada, non-process, not happening, or stopping of this process is known as nibbana. So, when it is not happening, the mind-body current, the current of mind-body process is not happening. When it is not happening, it is the cessation, that is nibbana. So, if it's flowing continuously, that leads to suffering. That is suffering and torture and heat. And if it stops flowing, then it is happiness. So we say bhavata sankhara. When it is flowing, it is proceeding, the conditioned phenomena are happening, then in this current of mind-body process, there are various kinds of qualities of these objects, good, bad and neutral, according to whether you desire these, whether they are desirable or not. And then not only this process of good and bad activities, there are also feelings, enjoyment or feelings involved in respect of these objects. So when the current of mind-body stops, means the feelings in respect of these objects also will stop. There will be stoppage of feeling. So when these activities stop, there will be no feeling of sensation about these activities. There will be neither good, bad, nor neutral feelings. Such is Avedayita, Sukkha, non-sensate pleasure. In this connection, during the Buddha's time, one ascetic called Udayan, while listening to the discourse given by Elder Sariputta, Elder Sariputta was always mentioning in his talk as Nibbana Sukham, Nibbana Sukham. Nibbana is pleasurable, Nibbana is pleasurable. And before the end of this discourse, this ascetic Udayan posed this question to Elder Sariputta: Venerable Sir, you say Nibbana is pleasurable, and there is no sense pleasure. It is separate or apart from sense of pleasure. There is no sense feeling in it. How can you enjoy this pleasure without senses? That was a question posed by Elder Uday. At that, Elder Sariputta replied, the absence of this sensation itself is the real pleasure. It is a kind of pleasure apart or different from sense of pleasure. As regards the sensual pleasures, karma guna, it has to contain, or it has to involve this raga, lust or craving. Only when there is craving involved, one will be able to enjoy sensual pleasures. If not, one will suffer. That is, one will not enjoy it, I mean one might suffer. For instance, if you want to eat something like a meat or fish, and you cook it with condiments, putting salt, this, that, and other, seasoning powder, and you make it well seasoned, then only it will become tasty. Otherwise, you will not enjoy the taste. So you are putting in or seasoning it with something you like, that is seasoning powder or condiment, something like that. Without them, you will not be able to enjoy it. So, if you are able to enjoy without seasoning, then it will be real pleasure. So, as in this connection, we will talk about these two kinds of Sukkha, pleasure, Jasika Sukkha and Avyasika Sukkha. Pleasure with lust or craving, and pleasure without craving or lust, which I'll discuss tomorrow.